Good afternoon, Advanced Web Design. Today we're going to start looking at JavaScript, and we're really going to just essentially be looking at a file that I have given you here in Schoology. We're going to open it up and we're going to be doing some manipulation. So first things first, I want you to read through the PDF that I've provided for you right in Schoology here. It's about I want to say it's about 10 pages. They're pretty short pages though, and there's some pictures. It's not just straight reading. There's some diagrams that I want you to take a look at. In fact, we can take a look at it together right now. And then you're also going to need to download this zip file as well. And that's something that we're going to be manipulating as we go through. So there really is no exact assignment as far as handing something in. I'm going to check in with you tomorrow first thing. But what I'd like you to do is quick download the PDF. And you're probably going to notice that it's from a book, and there's a really great book out there called JavaScript and jQuery. And it's something that we're going to be using. We're probably not going to use the entire book, but there's really helpful information and examples that I think we can pull from that I think are really going to help us translate that over to a website that we've created or a website that we're going to create. So right now I just want to kind of for us to take a look at HTML and JavaScript and how they work together in terms of a CSS as well on a pre-existing file. And then hopefully in the next few days, we're going to be able to segue that over to doing some of that stuff in our own HTML, CSS files and creating our own JavaScript. So if you take a look at this, you can either make it bigger, you can download it. It's completely up to you. Like I said, it's about 10 pages. I'm hoping that I scanned it in well enough that you guys can do some reading. But it's going to go through like how HTML works, what's the model that we're looking for. Some of it's going to be information that we've already known, so you can skim through some of that. Probably the main thing as you go through this is it does talk a little bit about JavaScript. Our interpreter, luckily, when we have this information or when we have it in our programs, the nice thing about TextEdit and Max, it interprets it for our JavaScript right locally on our computer, so it all works well. And then if you're on your Chromebook, Text also does the same thing. So you should be able to have a JavaScript file there as well. So if you scroll down, you're going to see this is, you're going to have a HTML file, and it's called add content, I believe, in your file. So let me quick look here at my C. Yep, it's called add content.html, and that's what this information is. And you'll notice that it has a link to the CSS, and this page basically talks about the basic HTML. If you take a look at the CSS that's provided for you inside that folder, it's going to be inside a CSS folder, and it's going to call upon c01.css. And you can take a look at it. It's quite extensive, their CSS work that they've done. And it's going to create this picture right here, this website right there. And that's something that you can load up as you download the file. And then it's going to talk about how we're going to use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and how they all fit together. This runs through some of the behaviors and some of the characteristics of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So it kind of breaks it down for you if you want to take a look. Some of the stuff might be a review from where we talked about how HTML has the content, CSS has style, and then JavaScript actually talks about the behavior of the page. What kind of interaction and actions can it do? And that's really what we're going to be focusing on as well, is creating more of a interaction, a computer program that can interact with a user using our HTML and redefining or refining our CSS as we go through. So as you read through, it's going to talk about different behaviors that's happening. So right now the HTML has the constructive.company. constructive and company, and it's the general information. You notice that the next step here would be using the CSS, importing some images, creating some text or font style. And then the third thing that you guys are going to do is you're going to actually start manipulating the JavaScript and then running the HTML. And that's going to be manipulated based on what the website or when the website is running. So you see right now it says good afternoon. If we ran this later on in the evening, it would say good evening. And so that's what the JavaScript is going to entail. So there's really three, like it says, three layers of approaching a web page. There's the initial content. Then there's the styling of that content. And then there's the interaction or manipulation of that content based on user input, based on the web and the user and when the user is accessing it. And that's really what our goal is with JavaScript. And you'll find a lot of websites are using JavaScript so that way it's a little bit more user-friendly. And so it runs through like how that works. So please take a look at that and do some reading. You can, if you prefer, you can download this. And if you use something like Evernote or Notability, those are great resources for you to download this and do some highlighting. You can highlight your work, add additional notes into that. So that way you can access that information later. Like I said, we are going to be doing JavaScript, so it will be important for you to at least read through this and understand what's going on. As we go through, though, as you go through this, this shows you kind of like what the JS file or your JavaScript file looks like. It's in your folder, so you can take a look at that as well. And it talks about the information that is in those folders. You don't have to worry so much about what information or the coding that's going on right now. We're going to break that down later this week and next week so that way we can apply it to our own files and our own HTMLs. But this will give you kind of a working backwards sense, or at least kind of a broad view of how it all works. And so what you're going to do is you're going to download this. This is just background information about downloading and the kind of information you're going to have in those files. Don't worry about accessing the index.html. We're going to just jump right in and look at the add content.html. And so you don't need to go to www.scriptbook.com. I will give you the information already. So it's all set for you in this folder. It also talks about linking, how you're going to have some script here. Script is used for Java script and putting that in, so you'll want to double check that as well. And then keep reading. It's going to talk about that. It's going to talk about the source code and how you can view that. If you don't do source code through your browser, you can always, again, look at your text edit files and look at the information there if you have all three files open, or at least the JavaScript and the HTML file. And this talks about the placement of how you can just have a script .write and how that's how you can initially start with just a welcome. Don't worry about additional pages because we're going to be getting to that later on. Just some objects and methods for you to take a look at what that means. Document.write, that's something new for us, so take a look at that. And then the code, the source code, and it talks about how that changes from good afternoon to good evening, good morning, depending on when it's open. And then a summary of the reading and the exercises as you go through the reading. I'll check in with you tomorrow to see if you guys were able to go through all this, and then we can really break it down and hopefully do some small applications with our own HTML. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me along the way, and I will talk to you tomorrow in the beginning of class.